So this is going to be the longest video in the series on investing with Iron Gate Properties. So this is our motto: real estate for investors by investors. So this video is going to cover a few different topics. We're going to go over why should you invest in house flipping, why in Jacksonville, Florida, why should you do it with me. We're going to go over a little bit of strategy, go over the results so far, talk about some of the misperceptions about flipping houses, why now is a good time to invest, and the risks involved. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you have seen probably some of the TV shows that are on all the different HGTV and different channels about flipping houses. It's become very popular in the past few years. I didn't realize there were quite this many shows, but when I was looking, I found all these. Haven't certainly watched all of them, but flipping houses in real life is a good bit different than what's on the shows. So this is what it really looks like. This is one of my properties. This is probably the one I'm most proud of. This was Mariana Road, if you want to go watch the video for that one. That's what it looked like before. Here's the after video or picture. This was a big project for us. We spent about $80,000 renovating this house. So that was the kitchen before. This is afterwards. So in the past 3 years, I've learned the flipping business and built up my team. So now I'm ready to scale it up and renovate more properties. So why should we invest in house flipping? So number one, it's a lot of fun. It's a really enjoyable process. There's certainly a lot of stress and a lot of problems that come up. But overall, taking a house that's a dump and turning it into something really nice is a lot of fun. Also, you can make a lot of money. I think that's one of the reasons that the TV shows are so popular is you get to see the big checks that all those folks make. I don't really trust their numbers, but it is what it is. I don't get checks as big as they do on TV, but it's still, you can make pretty good money. It's consistent. If you do the right kind of marketing, you can get a pretty steady flow of deals and be able to generate pretty consistent returns. We help people out of bad situations. So the sellers that I'm buying from, a lot of people have the misperception that we're taking advantage of them. So far, everybody that I've bought a house from has been relieved to get rid of it. It's been something they've been dealing with for quite a while. It's usually in pretty bad shape, and they're glad just to be done with it. And then also, it's safe. So when you say house flipping and safety in the same sentence, most people don't think the two go together, but if you do it right, it really is. So let's get into how it's safe. So the flipping formula, here it is. Mayo equals ARV times 0.7 minus repairs. So an example of that, actually, let me get into Mayo is the maximum allowable offer. So that's the most that a flipper should pay for a property. ARV is the after repair value, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then repairs obviously is how much you want to spend on it. So an example, say that the house will sell for $150,000. That would be the ARV. The repairs are $35,000. So the flipping formula says that your maximum allowable offer would be $150,000, which is the ARV, times 0.7 minus $35,000, which would be $70,000. So if I were going to this house, I obviously would not offer $70,000 off the bat, but that would be the maximum I would be able to pay and still make a profit on the house. So the purchase price would be $70,000. The rehab budget was $35,000. So my total cost would be $105,000. The sales price is $150,000. So my gross profit on that would be $45,000. So that's before realtor commissions and closing costs. So those would take about $20,000. So my net profit on that deal would be about $25,000, and that's about as low as we'll go down to about $15,000, but I want to get 25 is the target I'm looking for. So when you buy right, you eliminate most of the risk in the deals. So let me talk about the company just a little bit. Iron Gate Properties. I founded the company on March 7th of 2016. I'm pursuing a 5-stage business model. currently in stage 2. So the first 2 stages are learning the flipping business and then expanding the flipping business. So I'm in stage 2 now, expanding the business, and then the remaining 3 stages relate to multifamily properties or apartment buildings. That's the direction I'm going to go. I intend to keep the flipping side of the business up and going, but long term I want to get into doing apartment buildings. So buildings kind of like this, I don't want to do brand new ones. There's typically better returns in somewhat older properties, but not really old. Anything from like the 80s, 70s or 80s and newer. So why should we flip houses in Jacksonville? So the main reason is there's a net migration in every year. We've got about 30,000 people moving to the area per year, which is about 1.9% population growth, which is one of the highest rates in the state of Florida. We've got low unemployment. Right now it's running about 3.1%. So overall the nation is closer to 4%. So we've got lower than average unemployment. And we've got a stable housing market. So we've been creating a lot of jobs, and that's what's been leading people to be moving to the area. We also have a diverse economy. There's a lot of healthcare here. We have a Mayo Clinic, one of 3 Mayo Clinics in the country. We've got a new MD Anderson Cancer Center. I think that's one of 6 in the country. And then we've got a University of Florida teaching hospital that is affiliated with, obviously, University of Florida out of Gainesville. And then a couple of other big hospitals. So there's a lot of healthcare here. We've got a lot of finance and insurance companies. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida is based in Jacksonville. We also have Aetna Healthcare has a big operation here, and Deutsche Bank this is their largest employment base outside of New York City in the United States. They have a lot of their back office folks down here. It's also a transportation hub. Jacksonville's the corporate headquarters for CSX Railroad. We also have the Jacksport, which they are in the process of, or announced recently that they're going to be expanding. So we've got a lot of cargo that flows through there that comes in on the big ships. And then we also have a large military presence. There's 3 Navy bases in the area. And I think that can be a cause for concern if the Navy base closes. It can devastate a town, but I think the odds of that are very low. One of the bases is one of 2 submarine bases on the East Coast, and then the other 2 bases are the Mayport is a Navy base that does rehab on ships, and they've got several ships that are deployed out of Mayport, and then we've got NAS Jax, which is the Naval Air Station, that they do a lot of flight operations, and I think is one of the larger airport bases in the South. So we also have a short housing supply. During the crash a few years ago, between 2007 and about 2010, 2011, building pretty much stopped here in Jacksonville, and there's been people moving to the area pretty consistently. So we have a short supply of houses, and the builders are obviously back building now, but they're not keeping up with the people moving to the area. So why should you invest with me? I've got a pretty unique background that I think is well suited to doing this. Early in my career, I used to draw house plans. I wanted to be an architect when I was in high school, and learned to draw in AutoCAD, which is computerized drafting. So I drew house plans for I worked for an engineer in college doing all kinds of different stuff, and then drew house plans for a high-end residential architecture firm in Atlanta called Spitzmiller and Norris. This was a Southern Living Idea house that they did. I drew all the plans for this house. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina. This was another Southern Living Idea house that they did. I wasn't there when they designed this one, but I did alter the plans for this house for customization for several clients. This is some of their other work. This is obviously a kitchen that Spitzmiller and Norris did. And again, another exterior. So these are high-end houses, primarily in Buckhead. We did a lot in North Carolina mountain retreats. So I've got a background in architecture and construction. Also have a financial background. I've got an MBA from the Goizueta Business School at Emory University. Got an MBA in finance from there. I also have the CFA charter, which a lot of people have not heard of, but that's probably the most prestigious um, what do you call it? Designation. The most prestigious designation that you can get in the investment business. It's a 3-year program that is very difficult. I started my career working at SunTrust Bank. I worked in commercial lending and did a lot of real estate lending in that role. So learned how the lending side works. I've also done a lot of investment analysis. I was a stock analyst at Morningstar in Chicago, and then me and a partner set up our own firm, and we were doing stock analysis, mutual funds, traditional financial planning at D2 Capital Management. So I've also done a lot of real estate education. I've been doing real estate for the past 3 years. I just got burnt out of doing stocks and bonds after doing that for about 15 years. So I've been doing a lot of education to learn how to manage the flipping business. So I'm a member of Jax RIA, which is a real estate investing group here in Jacksonville that is very active with a lot of people doing a lot of different things. It's a good networking source to be able to bounce ideas off of people. I started off a training program, 40K Flips, which is an online course that I did. And then another one, Michael Quarles' Buy, Sell, Fix, and Flip, is another online course that focused mainly on marketing. I did Robin Thompson's Junkers to Millions. That's a 5-day, 10-hour-a-day boot camp that I went through that was very good. And then I also am a member of the House Flipping Formula training program, which has been the best one that I've done to date. So a little bit about the strategy I'm pursuing. So this is a chart. If you look at the two factors of quality and price, you can see the average house here in blue. I'm doing typically a higher quality rehab, as you can see in some of the pictures in the other videos that I've done on the going through the properties. So I typically do a nicer house, and I price it a little bit above the other house. So there's a bigger gap. You get a higher quality at a little bit higher price. And that's been a successful formula for me so far. I've been able to sell my houses quickly and get pretty high prices. So let's go through the results I've gotten so far. So this is the first house I did. This was on Say Drive in Jacksonville. So this was before and after. We did a pretty good bit of work in this one. I did most of the work here myself. I wanted to do the work on the first couple of houses to learn what the rehab process was like, what things cost, how long it should take. So in dealing with contractors, I'd have a frame of reference for what things should be. So for this property, I paid $90,000 for it. The rehab was about $35,000. Sold it for $167,500 and made a little over $42,000 in gross profit. And we sold this one in 8 days. So the next one I did was Mariana Road. Again, I did most of the work on this one. Put a new roof on this one and mostly interior work. So I bought this one for $64,000. Put about $35,000 in the rehab. Sold it for $132,500. So I made $33,500 on it. And we sold this one in 6 days. This was Denald Street. I bought this one. It was pretty much, the seller just needed to sell it quickly. It was in good shape, needed very minimal work. Actually, I didn't think it needed any work, but then the inspection came back with a few items. So we did about, I think $3,000 in rehab. So anyway, I paid $53,000 for it. Yep, we did $3,000 in rehab. Sold it for $71,000. So I made about $15,000 on this one. And we sold this one in 6 days. This was my biggest project. This is Mariana Road. So before and after. This is probably the one I'm most proud of to date because it was in such bad shape and came out looking great. We did a ton of work on this thing. New roof, new windows, new air conditioning, a lot of interior work. I bought this one for $75,000, put about 80 grand into it, sold it for $215,000, so I made about $60,000. Days on the market is a bunch of stars. This one had some issues. I had a couple of buyers back out on me, so it took a while to get this one sold. So I talk about that in the property video for Mariana, if you want to know the details. So the next one is Delta Avenue. Again, this one was a lot of work. This is probably the most in systems. We had to rewire this one, new roof, new windows, new HVAC, and mostly new plumbing in this one. So the main systems were not good in this house. So we bought this one for $72,500, put about $60,000 into it, sold it for $169,000, so made about $36,500. This one was on the market for 19 days before we sold it. And then I've got a couple of other ones. This one was a wholesale deal that I did. This house was on the river, obviously, but it was in a not great area. So this house is worth about $400,000 to $500,000, which is more than I typically want to invest. And then the area that it's in was about $100,000 to $150,000 houses. So there was just the ones on the river were really high priced, and it was just not a project I wanted to undertake. So I did a wholesale deal and sold this to another flipper that I know, and I made about $20,000. Or not about, I made exactly $20,000 on doing the wholesale. This is a project that I'm working on now, almost done. I bought this one for $95,000. This is 9591 Villiers Road South in Jacksonville, Florida. I put about $75,000 into the rehab. I'm probably going to sell it for about $205,000. So the gross profit will be about $39,000. And days on market, we don't know yet. I should have this one listed in a couple of weeks. And then another one, this is a wholesale deal that I did. This one is on Ripley Avenue. I think it's 2840 Ripley, I want to say. Basically, the prior owner was trying to flip it. He inherited it from his parents and was trying to flip it himself, and it got more involved than he was anticipating. So I had some other projects and didn't have the funding to be able to do this on myself, so I wholesaled it out to another investor, and I helped manage the flipping process. This was his first flip, so I kind of walked him through how everything works. So I made a wholesale profit of about $5,000 on this one. So some of the misperceptions about investing in flip properties. So number one is that you are making money from an increase in real estate prices, and that is just not the case. As you can see from my history, I'm buying houses that need a lot of work, so they're selling cheap because not a whole lot of people want them. They can't be sold to a retail buyer. Fannie and Freddie will not issue a mortgage on properties in the condition that I buy, so I'm not betting on prices going up. I'm just want prices to be stable while I own them. And I'm making my money from increasing the value of the property. So another misperception is that I'm stealing houses from the people that I'm buying them from, and I've not found that to be the case. Like I said, the people have bought from in the past have been happy to get rid of them. So I've got some videos here, video testimonials. I'm not sure if the audio is going to work on these, but let's give it a try. One.
Yes, Doug Levitt just bought my house, and it was probably one of the easiest transactions I've ever done, and he did an amazing job, and I would absolutely use him again.
And then another one.
Hi, we just closed on our house. Doug just bought my house, and I got a hold of his company because I was driving down Argyle Forest Road and saw his truck with big Doug Buys Houses on it, and I made the telephone call, and he's done a great job working with us and making sure that everything got taken care of, and I'm just thankful for being able to finish things out here in Florida and for the help that Doug's been to us.
So this is the truck that she was talking about. I've got magnets that I put on my truck to advertise to get sellers. And then one last one here.
I'm Michelle. Doug just bought my house, and I highly recommend him if you need something done quick and easy process. It went very smooth, and I'm very pleased with the outcome.
Not sure why the video and audio is off on those, but you get the idea. So another misperception is that flippers are just putting lipstick on a pig. So this is one of the houses I bought. There's no amount of lipstick that will dress that up. So that was obviously the roof has been leaking on this thing for quite a while. Destroyed the floor. That's what it looked like when I bought it. The hardwoods are all the hole was over here, so it came and messed up the hardwoods. So we took the hardwoods off and ended up the whole subfloor was bad. So we went in and replaced all this also. So when I do rehabs, I go in and fix all the stuff that needs to be fixed. So this is what that room looked like when we were done. And then again, this was another house. This was the Delta Avenue house. This is what the kitchen looked like beforehand. And as you can see, in really bad shape. We actually moved the kitchen to the other side. And this is what it looked like when we were done. So I'm not just going in and doing paint and carpet and doing kind of a crappy job. I go in and do a nice full rehab on these properties. So why should we invest in flipping houses right now? Number one, the Jacksonville economy is booming. As I talked about, there's 30,000 people moving here a day. There's a lot of building going on, new businesses being started, a lot of people moving to the area that need housing. Mortgage rates are still low, so there's a lot of activity. There's some stuff in the news right now that prices are coming down, but here in Jacksonville, that is true on the high end. So if you're looking at $500,000 houses and up, those are moving a little bit slower, and the prices are coming down a little bit, not a whole lot. But the entry-level houses that I focus on, anywhere from about 125 kind of is the minimum I want to do, up to about 250,000. There's still a lack of inventory, and they're moving pretty fast. So that's because there's a shortage of houses at the median price point. The median in Jacksonville is right around 200,000. So I want to stay pretty close to the median. I don't do high-end flips. I want to do the flips that houses that most people can afford. And then internet marketing in Jacksonville seems to be fairly limited. There's obviously a lot of people trying to flip houses, but from what I've seen, there's only a handful of people doing internet marketing, which has been my primary source for finding deals. So that is still kind of limited, and I want to take advantage of it now before it gets more competitive. So far, I've spent about $12,000 on internet marketing, which is I've been doing Google AdWords so far, and have generated profits of around $133,000. So I've gotten a great return on my investment, and plan on increasing what I'm doing in internet marketing in both Google AdWords, and I'm going to start doing Facebook marketing also. So some of the risks involved, it's not as risky as most people think it is. I always do a 75% loan to value. So I'm borrowing the money to flip these properties, to make the purchase and do the construction. So I don't go over a 75% loan to value. So let's go back to our example that we were using before. The purchase price was $70,000. I'm assuming I bought it at Mayo, not below. I'd obviously try and get it lower than that. So the rehab was $35,000. So the total cost was $105,000. The sales price is $150,000. So 75% loan to value means you take the $150,000 times 0.75, and that would give you $112,500. So that gives you a 25% buffer in case something goes wrong. So that $45,000 difference, which is the difference between $150,000 sales price and $105,000 cost, that's my profit, but it's also your safety as the lender. In case we can't sell this thing, you've only got $105,000 in it, but the property should be worth about $150,000. So what are the odds that a fully renovated house that's nicer than average will sell for 25% less than average houses? I would say they are not very good. So even worse than that, what are the odds that it won't sell for 35% less than the average, which would be $95,000. So that would be a 10% loss. So a nicely renovated house that neighboring properties and similar properties are selling for 150, I would say the odds of that selling for 95 are extremely low. But what are the odds that your stock portfolio could decline by 10%? I think we all know that that happens. I wouldn't say regularly, but it does happen fairly often. So there's two risks in flipping properties. Number one is unexpected repair costs, and number two is a drastic market decline in the price of houses in the area. So how do I avoid these risks or mitigate these risks? Number one, I don't do any expensive houses, as I was talking about. I want to stay in properties that the majority of people can afford. So I don't go much over the median house price. Like I said, that's $200,000 in Jacksonville, and I want to stay around about $250 is about as high as I want to go. I will stretch it to $300 possibly, but it will certainly not go over $300,000. So, like I said, I don't do any expensive homes, so you have a broader buyer pool. They also sell quickly because you have a lot of competition, a lot of people looking for those houses. And I can rent them as a backup option. I've kind of run the numbers on all the properties that I've done. A worst case scenario, if a house doesn't sell, I can rent it for, I can take out a loan for what I've got into it and be able to rent the property and cover the payments. So as a worst case scenario, for a backup, I can rent the house. So that's not true in higher end houses. You typically can't rent them for enough to be able to make the payment on a mortgage for those. So I'm also picky. I look at 30 to 40 properties to buy one. I haven't been really tracking this, so this is just kind of a guesstimate. I'm going to start doing better and tracking actually how many properties I'm looking at to buy one. So when I say look at, I mean analyze. That doesn't mean I'm going and visiting 30 to 40, but I'm running the numbers. I would say I probably buy one out of about 5 to 7 that I actually go to look at. But I'm analyzing a lot of properties to find one where the numbers will work. So what if the house doesn't sell? One thing I've learned in this business is everything sells at the right price. So if the house isn't selling, you probably just need to cut the price. And by buying right on the front end and buying at enough of a discount, we've got a pretty big margin there to be able to cut the price to get the property to move. But worst case, as I talked about, we can always rent it. So the question for you guys is, doesn't it make sense to diversify some of your investments, not everything, into something that has a higher return potential with limited downside risk? As I said, I spent 15 years in the investment business, and I think it makes a ton of sense to add real estate into your portfolio as a portion of your overall portfolio that has high return potential, but not as much risk as the stock market.